إذن السيدات والسادة الحضور، من الجغرافيا العالمية نعود الآن إلى جوهر الإبداع في التصميم الحضري. وقبل البدء في الجلسة النقاشية حول التصميم المبتكر والتقنيات في البناء، نتوقف مع فكرة قد تعيد تشكيل طريقة تفكيرنا في تخطيط المجتمعات السكنية. ماذا لو بدأنا تصميم المساكن الاجتماعية حول المراكز المجتمعية؟ لا العكس. ماذا لو كانت الخدمات والتعليم والصحة هي المحور الذي تبنى حوله الحياة؟ نتوقف الآن مع عرض يقدمه السيد إيثان كنت، الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة PlacemakingX في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. مستر إيثان.
Shukram, can you hear me, everyone? Wonderful. I'm going to stand up here. I'm really honored to get to be part of this conversation and to help learn from, share what you're learning around the world. And this focus on housing innovation and social housing is something to celebrate. What you have done here is extraordinary, and how you're having this conversation and how to build on that is really wonderful. I come at this from the focus on the spaces between the buildings, what we call the public realm. And we look at how by making the public realm work, you can leverage your investments in many types of infrastructure that you're currently focused on and ensure that there's success in the long term. We found, I'm going to tell you about some of the stories of mistakes certainly we're making in the US around social housing, around different infrastructure investments that have limited the long-term success and viability of our investments in lower income parts of the country and in social housing. But I'm also going to talk about how you can build on the livability focus that you've had on building houses and spaces, ensure greater livability and inclusion for more by focusing on what we call lovability, by creating homes and places. So housing is the biggest crisis around the world in many regards, and you're rightfully leading on that focus, on building more housing units, and making that affordable and accessible to everyone. But how we leverage those investments, how we connect them to the public realm, how we integrate them with transportation and land use planning are big opportunities, but also imperatives for the long-term success of these investments in housing. So what if we build not just houses, but homes? And what if we build not just spaces around them, but places? And so we think when you turn it upside down to create places, not just spaces, you make everything else work. So we're seeing people from many different causes, from many different of the SDGs, come to place as a means to more systemically address their goals, to create collaboration, to leverage resources, and to engage more people in the conversation, to build everyone's capacity to work together, to collaborate. But the focus on place is very much at the human scale. It's in common sense. Everyone's an expert in how public spaces work. You've all traveled around the world, but more importantly, you've all been to the souks. And the Manama souk represents all the qualities of great public spaces. But a lot of those qualities are missing in many of the new social housing projects. But they're not hard or expensive to implement. But the lens we take with place is really looking at, are there things to do there? Are there excuses to spend time, to be social? Can you get chai? Can you sit? Is there some shade? Is it comfortable and inviting? Does it reflect local culture, local identity, your image, your values? Is it connected? Is it accessible? Can you move through it on foot, on biking? Does it invite you in? And is it sociable? When people are connecting, you know you've won. When people are making eye contact or smiling, or just being comfortable around each other. That's people attract people. And in the souks, you see that all throughout. The subtle interactions, the comfort across difference, everyone's competing to contribute to everyone else's shared experiences. The retail that does the best gives the most back, is the most friendly to the street. But unfortunately, in a lot of new development around the world, where the development takes value. It extracts value from place, from shared value. There's big divides between the private space and the public space. So there's ways to measure places from a quantitative perspective, but also from a qualitative. But we think that most development is not thinking about place right now. If you Google the future of cities, most of the images that come up look a lot like this. And this, to us, is late stage innovation. There's a monoculture of cities looking more and more the same, a very narrow interpretation of what livability is that unfortunately correlates with high cost of living, which is not compatible with affordable social housing, with local culture, local economies, local identity. It's a frictionless environment that is very expensive. It's not that affordable. And when you actually build it, it looks more like this. This happens to be Jakarta, but it could be many cities around the world that funnel their significant investment into buildings that don't enable further innovation, that create distance between the different companies. It's harder to get to. They cause more traffic and so forth. We celebrate great architecture around the world. We need great architecture and design, but unfortunately, the most celebrated architecture doesn't do a good job of creating places. This is Frank Gehry's Guggenheim Bilbao that perpetuated a goal for many cities to create great iconic architecture, but forgot about how do we also create places. I visited here on my honeymoon, and these two men mugged a tourist couple of their camera right in front of the building because of the way it's designed. We can design great buildings that also create safety. I'm concerned about some of the design of in social housing districts of how it can support safer outcomes. In the US, a lot of the areas that we're in the 60s and 70s, we built social housing. They're some of the least safe places, not because of who's there, but because of how the spaces are designed. But how do we turn this upside down? It's not about being against these approaches, but by leading with places that people want to be, that reflect local identity and local culture. Detroit's one of the cities that we've worked the most in the US, and it had been destroyed by all the biggest mistakes we've made in the US about planning for cars and traffic, about attracting just big companies, monolithic architecture, and it suffered a lot of the biggest safety, health, and equity outcomes. It's also the city that's now changing the fastest in the US and reinventing itself through places, through active places like this beach that we put in the center of the city. And there's a larger narrative in Detroit of innovation, of people that have lived there forever, but also new people moving that want to be part of the story of co-creation of the city. So how you invite people in locally first, but also globally to be part of creating your innovation narrative, to celebrate the innovation that you're leading on already, but how they become welcome to helping to shape the culture that you define is a big opportunity. One of the biggest challenges, but one of the biggest opportunities is also how you plan for cars and traffic, how you do your transportation planning, and then how you integrate your transportation planning with land use planning. So if you plan for just cars and traffic alone, you get more cars and traffic. This is the biggest thing holding back economic development, health, equity in the US, and affordability. We build social housing in many parts of the world, but you can't afford to get there because it costs so much in traffic. This happens to be New Jersey. We've designed many of our parts of the US to drive around more and more and accomplish less and less. The cost to the economy is huge, but more importantly, the cost to place. It degrades the destinations transportation is meant to bring people to. We led a campaign in New York to reinvent our streets that were defined by traffic, to reinvent them and define them around people and places. And it doesn't cost a lot. And the Bloomberg administration was first for cars and traffic, and we showed them how we could turn around places like Times Square with temporary low-cost improvements, and the businesses were all completely against it at first. But once we put out these chairs that we got at a hardware store nearby, they never opened up the street Broadway to traffic again. And we did this in neighborhoods all over the city and all over the world with temporary low-cost public space activations. But it has a bigger implication on transportation planning, because we think to actually to turn around transportation planning, we want to start with the destinations you want to bring people to. And you want to make transportation infrastructure investments a catalyst for destinations that you accomplish many things at, rather than spread everything out and making people have to drive more and more and degrade the destinations they're going to. So, but it's the same thing for housing and spaces. If you plan for housing and spaces, you get housing and spaces. It's placeless. It's a lot of cost, a lot of investment that can sometimes degrade the destinations around them. So we think if you lead with homes and places, you get homes and places. If the goal is to create attachment and lovability, you actually ensure success for your investment. You can create, a lot of the investments are lower cost, but it's a different process. It's what we call placemaking. It's about engaging people in the process of shaping that neighborhood, taking shared responsibility for the public realm, and eventually taking ownership over it, attracting people on their terms to contribute to the goals of the space. So many parts of the world are doing this well. Singapore is obviously a leader in social housing and creating attachment and amenities for public spaces. Next door in Doha, I've gotten to work there a bunch doing placemaking trainings. The Sharif district shows how new development can create tight, active public spaces, tight streets, and how a public square like this one can anchor a district or a destination. At a smaller scale, social housing districts can learn from and reflect this type of planning. We worked in souks and in older social housing districts, doing workshops showing how you seed activity around a small place, around a chai stand, can be a way to build and reflect the local identity and build healthy social activity. But the best new developments in the world are what we call place-led development. They use public space as the anchor tenant. So when developers know the public space is going to work, they know the development works. They can drive the market. They can not just follow the market, they can drive the market with active public spaces. And most of these public spaces don't cost a lot. In fact, the biggest mistake made with place-led development is that they spend too much on landscape architecture and design that's too rigid or too expensive. It's not about the use and the life and the social activity of the space. In your Manama Souk, you have, again, all of the best ingredients of what makes good urbanism, good development, good social housing are reflected there. The density that you achieve there, the ways that buildings add to the public space and blur public and private space, and anchor local culture and local identity is key. We need to look at, unfortunately, a lot of the new social housing projects that we went to, there's a very divided, there's walls and card ports between the public realm and the private realm. But a lot of the best buildings you think of in Paris totally blur public and private space. You can't see where the building starts and the public space ends. And similar in good souks. It all adds to each other. In my neighborhood in Brooklyn, the best days are when people are just out on the streets, on our stoops, when we're blurring that private and public space. We have very small homes, but because the public realm is so friendly and active, it becomes an extension of our living room. That's my family, and we sit on our stoop, and that's where we talk to everyone and engage with people. So how you blur those public and private spaces is an opportunity. So yesterday we had a wonderful tour with my colleague Mohammed Al Khalifa, who's worked with us in New York at Project for Public Spaces on transportation planning, and he went to Columbia University on these issues, and he generously took us to many of the social housing projects. This was one of our favorites was the town Khalifa town in the south with wonderful design and created these great courtyards. Again, though, there's opportunities for now giving more purpose and meaning to these spaces. It's a wonderful layout and a design, how placemaking can take this to another level. So what is placemaking? Really, it's the process of building the shared value of the space between buildings and how that ensures and drives value for the developments as well. But it's a process. It's about getting everyone to be feeling like they're part of it. Even if you have the right answers from the top down, It's how other people feel like it's theirs that makes it succeed. And there was an MIT study that found that the biggest benefit of placemaking wasn't the improved place, but the social capital that's built through the process of place, how it builds capacity for people to learn from each other and to do more work together. So we've done placemaking conferences all over the world. We've collaborated with UN Habitat, for 15 years to help get public spaces into the New Urban Agenda and the SDG Goal 11.7. Each of these conferences, including we did one in Wuhan, China, and the Chinese government had a very strong definition of placemaking in public space. Each of them has learning that can be shared from and strengths and weaknesses, and we want to network these conversations globally. Everyone's innovating on public space, placemaking, and housing. How we connect these worlds is key. PlacemakingX has advocates and leaders in all over the world that are leading this work. We're not really an organization. We're a network of leaders that are learning, advocating, and doing, and building public spaces that are strong. There's now 30 different placemaking networks. There's an Massakin network that represents the Arab world and connects many different countries here that are working on placemaking. And we have conferences, again, on every continent pretty much every year that connect these people. We have a global summit coming up in Toronto in a couple months that we invite you to. Each of the networks has websites and social media that share their learning and allow you to connect with leaders in most parts of the world. So if you go visit some city, you can meet people and get a tour and learn from them. So the placemaking movement has roots back in the work of Jane Jacobs. My father founded Project for Public Spaces to put into practice their work. And we started calling that work placemaking in the 90s. But how we can apply that is we use this idea called the power of 10. Great cities have at least 10 great public destinations. A great destination has at least 10 places in it, and a great place has at least 10 reasons to be in it. So we think if you look at cities like New York, you can learn from the public spaces and how they really reinvented how a city is perceived locally and globally. But it's the process and it's the management of the space that's key. And they fail and succeed at the human scale. A great destination is at the scale of this room, but to make a public space work at this scale, it's much smaller scale places, and it's the layering of uses and purposes that make it work. So again, the triangulation of having a place to get some chai, to watch kids play, to sit, to get some shade, to put a bus stop next to it, that triangulation is key. So last couple slides, we want to look at how right now, we talked about how there's not collaboration between different departments in many cities, not collaboration between different disciplines. Place can be a way to enable that collaboration. And then it also can be a way to connect and leverage investments in different types of public space infrastructure. So you're investing a lot in streets and roads, in transit right now, in social housing, in schools, in arts and culture, in social services. But those investments are very expensive when they're not connected to each other. So placemaking is a way to leverage them and grow them. But eventually we see places and multi-use destinations as the way to lead development with these destinations that then center and connect other types of investments and services around them. So I'm very grateful to be part of this conversation. Shukran. I look forward to the panel coming up to dive into this conversation a lot more. Thank you so much. Yeah.